Hello. Welcome to another episode of Calm Down with James Eade. And I'm James Eade, and faithful viewers of the show will know how the show goes. I start out with a brief introduction, then I go to my senior anger correspondent from LA, Rick Rosner, and there's a little transition. Thank you, my producer. And then we'll go to a yoga therapist and teacher, Yudhishthira, who will help us learn some of the ways that we can calm ourselves down. And the show will then close from another yoga teacher, Divya, will help us relax at the end of the show. So if you don't know, this is season 2, episode 3, and you can go to AIRU.tv, the website that has all of season 1 and the first episodes of season 2. So you can catch up there. There's a couple of playlists there. Calm Down is one playlist, and then Change Your Mind is another playlist. The shows that I used to do for a network called Pod TV. And if you want to talk to us, reach us and talk to you about your experiences, you can always write to us at info@airu.tv. And hopefully we'll be able to respond, or sometimes have you join the show with some of your concerns and see if we can address them. So that's part of what we're trying to do here. The other reason, I want to help everyone calm down, because especially during an election season, but generally speaking, their country is very uptight. People have trouble talking to each other now. Things are seen in black and white. And, my experience is that when you have conversations with people, you find out there's more that you have in common than there are differences. But we're having trouble talking to one another today. But there's an ulterior motive for me doing this show, and that's to get you to buy this book, Freedom, Your Path to Recovery. And it says addiction does not have to be your master or your destiny. Because if you're in recovery from an addiction, and I don't think it matters what the addiction is addiction, recovery is recovery. But if you're in recovery, it's essential for you to be able to calm yourself down. And for me, my go-to technique is to take a deep breath. And if one doesn't work, I do 2, I do 3, I do what I need until I can calm myself. Because we have emotions, cravings, desires, but they are impermanent. They will pass if we give them a chance. So my ability to calm myself down starts with my ability to breathe deeply. And when I breathe deeply, I find the body can calm the mind as well as the mind can calm the body. And we're working on integration of mind, body, and spirit. And if we can achieve that, we can face the day with all of its challenges. And I was taught there was a good, oh my goodness, I hope I can find the affirmation. I'm going to look it up now. I'm ill prepared. I'm sorry. For calm. I was told, okay, I found it. And I was told once, the center of life's storms, you can stand serene. And so when I introduced that into my daily practice, I made a mistake. I said, in the center of life's storms, I stand supreme. So my ego is a very tricky thing, and it surfaces when I least expect it. And it can tell me I want something that's no good for me, or I don't want something that is good for me. So sometimes we think that our ego is not our amigo, but, it's part of the integration. The ego can be your ally. And this is what we want to work on. And it's a daily work that we have to do. If you're in recovery, it's just one day at a time. You have to do it every day. But you don't have to so much as you get to, because the rewards are so fantastic, beyond your wildest imaginations. When you feel the freedom that you lost, when you gave up your power of choice and were at the mercy of compulsions, of wants and desires that were beyond your control. So I looked up the affirmation in the affirmations of self-healing, and this is what it really says. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly at the center of life's storms. So when your life is stormy, remember that only you can calm yourself down. So the tools and techniques that we can be taught will be helpful going forward. When we're agitated or anxious, it doesn't matter. as long as we can calm ourselves down. So welcome to this session of this segment of the show, Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm going to bring on our senior anger consultant from Los Angeles, Rick Rosner. Rick, how are you today?
I'm okay. I do have a gripe.
You got a gripe? Okay.
Yeah, about 3 days ago, I was in a parking lot, parked 2 feet away from, well away from a Tesla, because heaven forbid.
Oh yeah.
And I opened my
owners,
door. I'm standing between I forgot something in my car, so I'm standing. My door's open. The first notch. You get 2 notches with your door. First notch. I'm getting something out of my car, and the door. Since the car is 12 years old, it drifts open to the second notch. Nothing goes, and it touches the Tesla.
Okay.
And I look, and the Tesla had like marks on it from my door, even though it had barely, I'm not sure it even made a noise. It may have gotten tunk.
Yeah.
And, the lady's sitting in her Tesla, and I take my pinky and I rub on it, and most of it comes off, but there may be a couple little millimeter, like chippy things that, so, the lady she barely speaks English, but she wants my license and registration, and she's going to talk to her husband about it. So I go home and I read about Tesla paint, which is controversial because it's along with the paint. Okay, the cars that we learned to drive on, you and I, back in the 70s, they were made out of tough, durable materials. Lead paint, which is hard and bright, but toxic. The bumpers, chrome, hard on top of steel, hard. Right. And when we learned to drive, we learned that if you're going to parallel park, you can just kind of inch forward until you touch the other car's bumper. That tells you when to stop, because they had bumpers for bumping. There was even a federal consumer protection law that said that cars should be able to withstand a bumper-to-bumper 5-mile-per-hour collision without sustaining damage, which is crazy today.
Right.
But the deal is the cars were durable, but the people in the durable cars would be killed because durable cars don't safeguard people. In the 1930s.
They totally give. Yeah.
They don't crumple. You crumple. Right. 1930s cars, metal dashboards, no safety glass. You get in a wreck, even if you're only going 42, because there weren't freeways in the 1930s. So you're going 42 miles an hour, you crash, you punch through the windshield, you're dead. So those cars, tough cars, but deadly. So eventually things change. So now cars don't really have bumpers. They have crumple zones, which under the front assembly, there's a big, thick brick of styrofoam, similar to I think there's styrofoam in football helmets. And you get in a wreck, and the styrofoam absorbs the energy, and plus your airbags absorbs more energy, because what hurts you in a wreck is sudden deceleration, but a crumple zone slows down. By the time the crash gets to you, your car is slowing. You got an airbag to catch you. It's like when a stunt person, does a 200-foot fall. There's a big bag to slow down. Right. So that's what cars do now. But it's freaking expensive if you get in a wreck where your airbags go off, it's like at least $2,000 to reset all your airbags. And I was looking, getting ready for this, at like I was behind a Porsche, which happens in LA, and then I was behind a Mercedes, and I was looking at the back of, they don't have bumpers. They have a back assembly. You crash into that, it's got to be at least $6,000, probably more like $8,000, plus the airbags. So you're looking at $10,000. You don't pay that. Your insurance company does. But if you get in a little teeny thing, you either suck it up and pay the $1,200 to repair the little teeny. They take off the bumper. They fill it with Bondo. They say all the different coats. That's going to be at least $1,200. You're not going to go to your insurance with that because you've got a deductible, and your rates are going to go up by about $1,000, maybe more, over the next 3 years. Because once you get in a wreck, they can raise your rates for 3 years. Plus, I just read this: car insurance rates are skyrocketing anyway, because post-COVID, we're getting in 15% more wrecks because COVID eats your brain, makes us angrier and less able to judge distances. And the paint. All right, so lead paint was great for giving you a ding-resistant car, but no more, because lead paint will mess up your brain. And I read Teslas are, if you buy a Tesla in California, it was built in California, and California has strict environmental protection laws. So the clear coat, the coat that goes on over the color coat to make your car extra shiny, is a water-based clear coat, which is super wimpy, where you can't even take it through a car wash. It's recommended. A lot of people online recommend you buy your Tesla and you immediately drive it over to a place that puts on a second layer of protective coating for, I don't know, probably $1,000, because the factory paint and clear coat doesn't protect against anything.
Wow.
So
I washed my own Tesla, and I never thought I could be washing off the first coat of the paint.
You won't be washing it up. You'll just be putting, like, if you're like a connoisseur, you might be putting little scratches in it. So anticipating that these people would, I'm pretty good at restoring miniature art.
Right.
And I was thinking maybe these people are going to say, yeah, we need you to fix the car. I go, well, give me a shot at restoring it myself, because that's what I do. It's one of my hobbies. And then I looked, Tesla has a chip repair kit. It comes with a paintbrush, a sponge, a very soft cloth,
right,
the paint, and a little bit of thinner stuff.
Right.
And that kit is $60.
Yeah.
So
and it works. I mean, I have scratches on mine that it fixed. Or, I mean, again, if you're a connoisseur, you could see it. But if you're really precise, it looks pretty good.
So it's kind of like medicine, where medicine used to be cheap because it didn't work. Now we have medicine that can fix a ton of stuff and catch a lot of stuff before it can hurt you. But it's super freaking expensive, and we just throw it at the insurance companies. We play the game where the providers charge a ton of money for these procedures, and you hope the insurance will pay, or the insurance will negotiate it down. But if you don't have insurance and you have to pay it privately, you're screwed. So because of the way insurance works, there's not a lot of incentive to reduce costs. In fact, there's incentive to go the other way, because you need somebody to pay a ton of money to pay for the people who can't, who are going to bail on their bill and get sent to a collection agency.
Right.
So I guess my gripe is that, along with all this technology that makes cars safer, maybe spend like 5% of your time trying to figure out how to make all this technology a little cheaper.
Yeah, because certainly I don't think Elon Musk, he was building something that cost wouldn't be an object. People would not be afraid of spending extra because it was so cool. The technology was so cool.
Right. But I mean, when we were teens, cars would bonk into each other, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
But now you just cannot touch another car. The metal. This it used to be made out of thick steel. Now it's thin aluminum for mileage, gas mileage. The less the car weighs. Also, like the front bumper on my 2012 Camry. I'm the third driver. It started with my wife, then my kid. Now it's come to me. And that bumper is held on with little 1/8 of an inch plastic tabs that just rip away. It's so crazy how cheap and fragile they are. That bumper hasn't been in very many bumps. What it's been in has been in push-up things, like where you're coming down a steep driveway and then there's the street and the bumper gets pushed up.
Sure.
That's enough to tear the bumper loose. Why? What good does that do?
Okay. So where is the gripe directed at? Is it the automotive industry making cars that are safer, cooler, but less durable? Or
yeah, I mean, the cars we learned on, they were durable in some ways, but they were also pieces of shit.
Yeah.
That was during the era where Japanese cars started making huge inroads because American car manufacturers were freaking lazy.
My first car was a Toyota Corolla because I could fill it up for $5. Mm-hmm. And of course, it was the 70s. But in any case, it didn't need repairs. Nothing ever went wrong.
Right. You could drive like a Honda or a Toyota. The bumper is a piece of shit, but you can drive it for 170. I mean, people expect now to get more than 150,000 miles out of their cars.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, trucks, they still have freaking bumpers, most of them.
Yeah.
Made out of the same shit that they used to be, like steel, chrome, and rubber.
Right. Yeah. I always wonder why people have trucks that, park downtown in Menlo Park where I live, and that's part of the reason, it's.
And then there's one more thing is
there's 30.
The weird, like, I can see how it happened. That in the 19th century, people with means, had carriages. And then that morphed into people had cars. And now we live in a country where every adult with sufficient income has their own car. But that car,
at least one, yeah.
But that car sits undriven for 22 hours a day, and falls apart after 12 years and goes to the junkyard, and that whole waste of resources there will be a different system in the future. It's not sustainable.
So what do you think is the answer?
For one thing, I mean, we're seeing the very beginnings of it, and very bad beginnings with Lyft and Uber, and there are car sharing services, and they're all kind of crappy in different ways. Like Uber may never make a profit because it's a bad business model, but eventually we will figure out, like, there's this guy, Cory Doctorow, who writes about the future, and he writes about how the FANG companies, the Googles and Microsofts of the world, engage in shitification, which is they make their services, they start off pretty good, and then they make them shittier because in the early phase, when they're good and they're making friends with you, those companies are losing a ton of money, so they have to make it shittier over time once you've been roped in.
And then you can buy the premium product.
Right. So anyway, this guy understands the future pretty well. And he writes about how, a lot of households where somebody is handy you have a power drill. I've got 2 power drills. I use them maybe 10 minutes a year.
Uh-huh.
I just need to put a hole in a piece of wood or some dang thing. Then back it goes to where I can't. It takes me half an hour to find where I left it.
Right.
And he goes, in the future, there will be communal power drills where you'll just go online. You'll say, yeah, I need the community power drill, and a drone drops off the drill.
To just say that, times are changing in some ways. When I was in Paris, I saw this bike sharing application that they used, and it seemed to be working very good. And then I went to Amsterdam, and it was even better.
Bike sharing, because Amsterdam runs on bikes.
Yeah. So, but you pick it up and you drive where you're going, and you put it in another one, and you won't go about your business. And so it's not even like Uber where you have to get somebody to take you. The bike is there for the taking, and then you drop it off into another place. Of course, there's probably some small charge to plug into the system, but it seemed to be part of this communal attitude. Like, I don't need this for very long, but I need it right now. Can I get it and use it? And
with cars, we live like kings. We have our own personal little chamber. We drive in luxury wherever we want. But if you look back on history, kings lived like shit, because a king in the 17th century, he had servants and, people help him put his stockings on and everything, but he was still shitting into a chamber pot.
Yeah.
And dying of a toothache in his 40s and stuff.
Right.
So, the future's going to look, like MAGAs would call it socialist. I would call it more efficient in some ways.
Well, we've become a global economy, but we haven't become a global community in any sense of the world. But I do think that, this community thing, and you can, we branded socialist as a bad thing, but the countries that are the happiest are like Finland, who, countries that have some balance between the initiative in a capitalist society, the innovation in a capitalist society, and this way of we've got to take care of everybody too.
Yeah, but it's not even socialist. Socialist is where
it's a combination, right?
Socialism is where you redistribute shit that's worth something. Mm-hmm. Amsterdam looked at bikes, or somebody in Amsterdam was like, well, we can do this really cheap. Let's just do it. And maybe we'll make some money, like off of the, So is it really socialism when you're sharing a bunch of stuff that doesn't cost very much? I don't think so. Right. I call it computism, because it's a product of of AI making and technology, and making shit cheaper. So when shit is almost free and you're distributing it, well, you're not taking shit away from people.
It's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah, technology is made 100 years ago. Food and clothing cost 4 times as much relative to your income as they do now. And that's going to keep dropping. And eventually you'll see housing disrupted. So I guess another gripe, a related gripe, is that we live in a country where everything that isn't just viciously capitalistic is socialism, which is bullshit.
It's dumbing it down so that you don't even define your terms. And so, the idea that you can talk intelligently and come to some understanding, because I've found that if you have these conversations, you find that you're not that far apart on these issues, but we're stuck in these polarized extremes. And so we can't even have that conversation that would bring us together.
Not yet we can't.
Not yet we can't. Thank you for that. And, this is one of the things that we've talked about in the past. It's the leader of the country can set a tone. And so if the tone is divisiveness, we're going to have trouble. If the tone is, let's help each other out as well, because you don't get ahead by stepping on someone else's neck, despite what you've been told.
Well, Trump does. with 3 weeks to go in the election, his rhetoric is has gotten increasingly violent and aggressive.
Scary.
Yeah, but to some people, it sounds more realistic, acknowledging the tough truths,
Right.
which
He
is
tells it like
bullshit.
it is. Well, he lies every second.
Yeah, yeah.
If he speaks for 20 minutes, he tells at least 40 lies.
Yeah, but a good sign is Kamala Harris is going on Fox News to get interviewed, I think tomorrow, maybe,
Oh,
by Brett Baer, who among the Fox News people is, he's not Laura Ingraham or Hannity. He will probably be pretty fair.
I was sorry to see Chris Wallace leave, but I heard him tell his reasons why is that he didn't have problems working there and never felt pressure from the superiors, the authorities at Fox, but that it changed, and it was no longer, the truth was no longer as important as telling people what they wanted to hear. And so there was another guy, a journalist who had integrity, and we still need those. And so, yeah, a fair and balanced interview would be wonderful to see. And we want to not. I feel like I drag myself down if I'm too negative about those people who disagree with me. But I do believe that we've lost a track of our value system, which was to tell the truth. Truth, justice, and the American way. I grew up with Superman. That was the premise of it. That's become more and more of a joke. And so, but I still think what's good about the country will fix what's wrong with the country more often than not. Over the short term, you might not see it, but over the long term, I still believe that that's the overall trend.
I tend to agree with you, but I also think that we will become increasingly AI'd. AI is stupid right now. It can't come up with ideas of its own. It can only, copycat people's thoughts, but that won't always be the case. And I'm hopeful that, the smartest things on earth will be people who are best at teaming up with AI.
Right.
It won't just be AI being smarter than everything. That may come later, but 10 years from now, it'll be people in teaming up. And I'm hoping that this will inoculate AI with human values, and that it will decide that it's on the side of what you taught, truth, justice, and the American way, that the preservation of life and order and decency
common decency
is better for it, along with things that aren't it. And of course, there will be mad scientists, supervillain AIs, but there will also be crime-fighting AIs that'll go after anything you can imagine that people can do in terms of characters you might see in a movie. I'm guessing we'll see AI be doing.
Yeah. So the comic books will be somewhat different.
Well, for one thing, they'll be piped directly into your brain via
yes. You just
contact lenses that
download it. Yeah. If you could probably still be able to control the stream to some extent.
To some extent, yeah.
Yes, but that's our future, and we might as well accept it. It's going to happen, and keeping it as benign and value oriented as well as commercial oriented. That's going to determine what kind of life we live. And I think that the idea of keeping people's ability to live lives of dignity at its highest, it's got to be programmed into the AI at some point.
Well, I'm hoping. And at this point, you ask, what am I doing to keep myself calm?
Yes.
And I'm just not sure I am, with 3 weeks to go until the election.
I have to admit, I sometimes this month I've been feeling a bit fraudulent because I don't think I'm going to calm down until after the election. I think I'm on edge.
Yeah,
And I've
me
been
too. And like I find my heart like thumping a little harder than usual, or maybe I'm just noticing it more.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
the
there's a heightened sense of that for me, is that, and I know that part of it is I'm paying attention to it more. So I'm using the tools and techniques that I've been taught. I'm doubling down on some of them. And, but I'm saying, I don't feel peaceful and serene. I still feel like better than I did when I was having an anxiety attack, but I'm calm enough to function, to have the show, to perform. However, if I'm honest with myself, there's still this latent fear sitting in the back of my mind about how this country can go.
yeah,
And if it happens elsewhere, it could happen here. Um, and there's an authoritarian movement that we used to think of the United States as the leader of the free world, to oppose that type of thing. But now we might be partnering with it,
yeah,
and
yeah. And so there are a couple statistics I look at that make me feel a little better. One
good.
is that there's some indication that women are showing up to vote early much more than men, like 54 to 46 or 55, 45. And women, lean away from Trump. And what was the other statistic? Oh, yeah, the Democrats are outvoting Republicans nearly 2-1.
Yeah,
But
but that's always been true, hasn't it?
yeah, so
In the
it
early
does.
returns.
Yes, but I wish I had.
Well, I don't know the numbers, yeah, but I
I
think
wish I had the statistics from 2020 so I could compare directly.
right.
But on the
Yeah.
other hand, maybe I don't wish I had those because maybe they wouldn't compare as I don't know.
Well, I think it's still a good sign, and we're clinging to every good sign that we can now.
Yeah.
And but in the meantime, we're going to do the best we can because we cannot control the outcome.
Right. I do turn to sports, which is ridiculous because I was the worst. I was the picked last kid or third last.
Uh-huh.
But like the Dodgers are in the National League Championship Series, and
Yep.
so I can get a little distracted by that.
Yes. Yes, we have New York represented twice, the LA,
Yeah.
and what's this city? Cleveland?
Yeah, Cleveland Guardians, which
Yes.
Because Indians no longer acceptable.
Yes. We banished
So
that.
I don't know where Guardians comes from. It just seems like
Yeah.
really lazily generic. Maybe there's a reason that Guardians are somehow associated with
Well,
Cleveland.
that's my homework assignment. Thanks, Rick. I'm going to figure that one out. Next time I'll tell you.
Okay.
I do remember my father-in-law went to Stanford when they were the Stanford Indians, and when they changed their mascot's now the tree, because Palo Alto, where Stanford is Spanish for tall tree, and he still wore his while he was living the Stanford Indian hat. He wasn't gonna change him.
That sounds like something my dad would have done.
Well, thanks again for
Thank
joining
you.
us for this segment of the show. I wish you well until the next I see you.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, that was Rick Rosner, our senior anger correspondent from Los Angeles. And this is the end of this segment of the show. But stay tuned because we're going to go into a yoga therapist and teacher, Yudhishthira. And after that, we're going to close the show with our favorite closer, Divya. So thank you for Hi, this is the segment of Calm Down with James Eade that talks about yoga and how it can help us to calm down. And since you don't want me telling you about these things, I have asked Yudhishthira, a yoga therapist and teacher, to join us. And greetings to you, Yudhishthira. And I think that you're going to tell us or show us something related to the chakras.
It's true. And just let you know, Jim, there is a general order and a flow that may not seem obvious from one segment to the other. But I do have a sense of direction as to where we're going. And, today I wanted to actually give a little bit of background, even more than what I've done already in terms of the chakras. I think it will help. And then
Okay.
we'll get to some specifics about how we can influence the chakras directly. And so we'll get to that today.
Perfect. All right. So I will let you get to it.
Beautiful. So welcome, friends. And if you have been following along, the first two episodes in this season, we've been talking about the chakras. And last season, we talked about the 8 limbs of yoga, in particular, the yamas and niyamas. Those are basically the rules of conduct, both for how to conduct ourselves in the world and then how to internally change our consciousness from those things that are short-lived and perishable, the material world, the bodies we're in, to those things that are more permanent. And so this idea of the chakras is really an important component to something much bigger. And so that's where I want to begin. And that is to say that last week I spoke about karma and reincarnation. Karma and reincarnation have made their way into the sort of common vernaculum. They're part of daily language. People don't always use them well. They don't always get a complete understanding. But it's not a bad thing that people have have come to a place of having an awareness of something bigger than this lifetime. And at one point, I read a figure that of all people of all religions, that a vast majority, 70 some odd percent, accept reincarnation as part of the recycling process of the human soul. And that's a wonderful advantage to begin to think that this lifetime is not the only one, that I have to get it all right. But I want to back up a little bit and talk about how this came to be. Why is there within the common culture, the Western culture, this awareness of what has always been understood in certain Eastern teachings, not only teaching of yoga, but of the religions that are yoga, of which yoga is central to them, Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism, these particular religions. But yoga is none of those, because yoga relates every bit as completely to a Roman Catholic in the 14th, 15th, 16th century. When a yogi looks at St. Francis of Assisi or St. Teresa of Avila, and you read their writings, what you're realizing is that these are people who are experiencing everything that yoga puts out there in terms of what to expect. And that's why last season I have mentioned these 8 limbs of yoga. They're stages of awakening. They have nothing to do so much with, well, now I'm going to do step 1, then step 2, then step 3, and I'll get there. It isn't that way. I want to go back to the mid 19th century and say that at that point in the mid 19th century, 1850s or so, that 2 great avatars, and here again we end up with a word that has been brought into the mainstream and diminished by video games. An avatar, before there was ever an avatar in a video game, or a movie that spoke of Avatar. There was the reality that certain souls reincarnated not because they had to, but because they chose to for the upliftment and benefit of human beings, for us. And these were the avatars. And two avatars, Jesus and Babaji, came together, and Jesus said to Babaji, look, the teachings that I originally brought, the original teachings that are recorded in the New Testament, in the four Gospels, those original teachings have been lost. People misunderstand them. Let me give you an example, and I might have mentioned this one before. Jesus said in Matthew, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. This relates directly to the sixth chakra, that when we put all of our attention, bring the energy of the other centers upward to that point, the whole body becomes filled with light. Everything that we perceive is light. And even though our eyes are closed, so it's an inner light. And so these teachings were reinvigorated in the 19th century by a line of gurus that culminated in Yogananda coming to the West. And Yogananda came to the West in 1920. Very interestingly, it was a broader dissemination of the teachings of yoga that sort of laid the groundwork for Yogananda to be here. Many of what we think of as the transcendentalist poets in America in the 19th century, Emerson, Thoreau, Whitman, these poets all were influenced by the Bhagavad Gita. And you can hear it and read it and know it if you've read the Bhagavad Gita. You can see how it infused their poetry. But in 1893, the very year that Yogananda was born, in 1893, the first yogi from India came to the United States and made an impression here. His name was Swami Vivekananda. And Vivekananda came in 1893 and did a work, but then returned to India. He never intended to stay. And in 1893, Yogananda was born. And in 1920, Yogananda came to this country and laid the foundation for everything that we think of as yoga today, including this general understanding of karma and reincarnation, this general understanding of meditation, this general understanding of the chakras. And today, on purpose, over that shoulder, there we go, you'll see part of a chakra chart. And I brought it here on purpose. But these chakras are interesting because of the fact that they do not stand alone. They are part of a broader system. You may remember back to your basic science classes. Think about what you learned, and everybody gets the same basic information that you start learning in biology or life sciences. You learn about the cell, and you learn how the cell works. You learn the various parts of the cell. You may not know all the chemical processes until you go deeper into the study of it. But when you do, by the way, go into what happens within the cell itself in terms of energy production, energy storage, energy conversion, it is nothing short of seeing the divine making its way from the world of energy into the world of matter through this conversion that we sometimes struggle at studying if we have to study it in organic chemistry. And we begin to lose track of the miracle, but it's a miracle nonetheless. This ability to take energy, something non-physical, physical, stored in a physical particle, and build up those physical particles so that when they are released, the energy is released again and allows an entire organism to operate. So from a cell, you end up with a collection of cells to become a tissue, a specific type of tissue, like smooth muscle tissue or something like that. But then those tissues are organized and put into something even more concrete, like an organ. And so you have the specific tissues and cells of the heart that do specific things. But again, there's a little bit of a miracle to always be noticed there, that when you're working with a human physical heart, that you end up with heart cells. It's a very interesting thing. Heart cells that are kept in a living environment, when put with neighboring heart cells, not even connected to them, but in the same vicinity, their rhythm, their beat, their pulsing begins to become integrated, and they get related, and they begin to pulse at the same rate. It's a sort of attunement that goes on. And so it is with the human heart and the chakra, the fourth chakra, the Anahat center, that when we were in the company of others who are vibrating at the same rate that we are, in the same way we are, that we resonate in that way. And we can work with these systems consciously. So cells, tissues, organs. Then there are organ systems like the endocrine system or the cardiovascular system. And so it is with the chakras as well. I didn't prompt Jim to do it, but there's a second image that maybe we'll share it next week, but it actually shows the chakra system as it's the other one, Jim, if you can find it. It's sort of an orange one. And that system is one that includes a specific number of pathways. So we think about the chakras as going from bottom to top or top to bottom along a straight line, and that's not wrong. It's just that it's a very incomplete picture that there are. For example, if you look at the images behind me, connecting here and here and here and here, you'll see that there are those external pathways. In some images, those are shown as two straight pathways that go up and down on either side of the main pathway. So this is a system, but it's an energy system, and the system works together in the same way that the cardiovascular system works, not only to reoxygenate blood and move it through the body, moving in two directions, but there is also, there we go, that was the one. So if you look at this image, you'll see that there is along the way, I don't know if my pointer will show up, but there are these connections between the chakras. And those are called nadis, N-A-D-I-S. Now, the nadis that are focused here are called Eade, I-D-A, and Pingala. You don't need to remember any of these things. It's only to say that there is a reference point in our physical body which relates to those two side pathways. So Jim, if you can take that down now. And those two physical references are our nasal passages. So the way in which things generally work is that if you inhale left, I think I'm backwards already. So if you inhale left, the energy of the breath is coming up the left side of your spine. And if you inhale, you'll notice that the breath feels cool. As you exhale, if you exhale through the right nostril, you'll feel the breath is warm and the energy going down the right side of the spine is warm. So inhaling left, cool, exhaling down right, warm. So these are called the Eade, IDA, and Pingala, Pingala, and they are sort of like tributaries. But here's the magic, and here's the part I really hope you can get, is that there's a divine organization that ends up having resemblances from one structure to another. All of you have some sense of what a DNA molecule looks like. It's a double helix. It goes up and down. And the power of that is literally the power to take a non-material reality, a blueprint, and bring it into a physical reality, the human body, or the body of any creature. So when it comes to the Eade and Pingala, rather than going up and down, it actually goes up in a single helix and down in the opposite direction, passing through the individual chakras. So you have this double helical structure that is central to the DNA molecule and also central to this non-material map that we have of these energy pathways. Now, in the practice of yoga, we increasingly find techniques that will give us the skill to harness the power to bring our attention increasingly inward to this pathway and moving from the bottom at the base of the spine, at the base of the chakras to the root chakra, up and in, and bringing it all the way up here. Notice that this center up here, the medulla, has two poles. So in a few minutes, we're going to actually chant at the chakras and to identify the fact that we can use the physical body to bring energy to a particular center, and then that we can use sound to activate that center. You'll hear me as I teach talking a lot about science. I've mentioned it before. I am a yoga teacher. I teach meditation. I teach yoga philosophy. I use yoga techniques as a therapeutic tool to help people. And I'm also a physical scientist. I'm a science teacher. And so I don't see a conflict, rather I see complementary realities. And it's not a difficult thing for me to bring these things together. However, I have enough of the skeptic in me that there's a certain level of new aginess that I've always dismissed. You know, the sound healing, the light healing, the pyramids, all these things. But I will tell you that for the first 40 years of my life, almost all of the 40 years of my life, from the time I was about 15 until the time I was about 39, I was deeply invested in drugs and alcohol. It had consumed me. I had periods of sobriety. I was still doing relatively good things in a lot of ways, but nonetheless, I was still addicted to these substances. And at one point, I had a moment of divine grace in which that desire was taken away from me. And now I look at it as if the karma that had led me to that behavior was spent. It was done. I didn't need to work with that anymore. However, 30 years after being clean and sober, over 30 years, I found myself still having dreams in which I would find myself drinking or inebriated or being chased because the police had found my stash and things like that. It was horrible. Every night I would tend to have these dreams over and over again. I finally said, I've been doing this work, all this work on my chakras for years. Shouldn't I be able to change it? And the fact is, I hadn't. So I began to look for outside solutions. And I went to a sound healer here in the area where I live in Los Altos. And I connected with her, and she worked with the chakras, second chakra and third chakra. And honestly, from the first session, in which I was highly skeptical, but she brought in the sound bowls, crystal bowls. She had a gong. She had lights of particular frequencies arranged above my chakras. She had crystals below me on the bed I was lying on. I've had no such dreams any longer. And so I had to broaden my sense of the value of sound in healing, the value of sound to clear the chakras. Now, in future episodes, we're going to go through these chakras in greater detail. And I think that probably we're going to wait until next time. I haven't been timing myself, but I think that we are probably out of time for today. So what I want to do is to set up. And so, Jim, if you want to come back in at this point.
Thank you so much.
I feel like it'll be too much if we add this. We'll save this to next time.
I think
I want to share with you that this idea of sound healing is something that we can also do on our own, and that it's this magic. It seems like magic.
Right.
It's actually simply the natural gifts that we are given when we are ready to use them, that we can directly influence the energy that flows through us and to work with the source of that energy using the techniques of yoga. The chakras are simply fundamental, and working with the chakras is a great way. You can do it with yoga postures, you can do it with meditation techniques, and next week we'll actually chant at the chakras, and I'll offer you one more technique.
Okay.
For vibrating the chakras
Right.
and eliminating the samskars, the things that block the chakras.
Reiki healing. I went to a Reiki therapist, and she was going through my chakras, and she said that my creativity was blocked, and she told me for my homework assignment to draw an orange, and it was really amazing. So it because I suffer from contempt prior to investigation, and I didn't really think Reiki was going to help me, but it really did. And a lot of these things are integrating, and sound is essential to that. Light is also important, and so the colors matter as well, which is
They do indeed. And you just used the right phrase that expressed what I was feeling when I first went in for that session. Contempt before, what is it?
Contempt prior to investigation.
Contempt prior to investigation. But the idea of focusing on orange, I don't know if you can see it, but down there at the bottom, all right, that's chakra number 2.
Right.
And that is the chakra associated with both sensuality and creativity.
Right.
And so for that reason, she quite properly had you focus on that color.
Right.
it comes into all kinds of ways that can be interpreted by people who are not ready to get it as being sort of left coast, new age,
Yes. Right.
airy fairy sort of thinking.
Right. Right.
When in fact these are all very practical
Yeah.
methods of just changing our reality.
And it's helpful change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's moving in the positive.
Right.
One of the things that Yogananda brought to common culture, and it's not common enough that everybody knows it, but he brought a term called self-realization,
Yes.
capital S. And self-realization can be sort of thought of at first as increasing awareness. And that's really what we're talking about, is just expanding our awareness. And the ego and preconceived ideas will tend to scoff and laugh, at
Yeah.
expanding our awareness.
And what you're saying, this is my copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and I opened it to the page while you're just talking. It says, "The self is the friend of man, who masters himself through the self. But for a man without self-mastery, the self is like an enemy at war." And so this is really sums up kind of what I've been experiencing throughout my work, is a sense of self-mastery. And I am nowhere close to that yet. But not being driven by urges, desires, and compulsions, but being able to be at peace. And when the storms of life are swirling around me, I can remain in the center calm. And
Well, that is, that you and I have this in common, Jim, that I have many friends who I incorrectly presume are more spiritually elevated than I am. Honestly, we don't have any idea. We don't have enough information to know. It's just that what I know is that in this lifetime, this matter of self-mastery, of gaining control over my urges, my compulsions, has been a major theme. How to operate in the world without doing harm.
Right.
And this knowledge of what's going on. Here's the thing about the chakras in particular, but yoga in general, you don't need to know about the chakras for them to have an impact on what's going on.
Absolutely.
They
Many
are
things are unconscious. Yes.
they are obvious when you look at somebody who is overly sexually motivated, overly to the point that it's disruptive to their lives.
Right.
And minimizes people into that being all they are.
Right.
Men or women, it doesn't matter. That is a challenge, and it can be traced back when they're ready to working with that second chakra. Addictions, second chakra, big time. And so even if we aren't aware of it, the chakras are certainly at play. One way I think of the chakras, you've seen the Matrix movies.
Yes.
Right? Matrix movies did a wonderful job of creating this consciousness that maybe everything that we are living is just a projected reality that we are a part of, and our consciousness is part of that projected reality, the body we're in. And it's not a bad image, except that behind that projection in the movies was this sinister,
awful, yes.
Yes.
Right.
reality. But if it is in fact a divine source creating that projection, the chakras become simply lenses through which our reality, literally the people we meet, the places we go, the thoughts we have, the feelings that are felt, all of these are quite literally projected through the lenses of the chakras. And if we have a lot in the heart, for example, where we are constantly going outward into the world, finding the right person finally, only to have the right person suddenly become the enemy.
Right.
And we do that over and over and over again.
An old story. You did.
It ends up being that the projection of my life is through the center.
Hmm.
And when I begin to pull those energies inward, then that recurring event ceases to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway.
My last thought is that I used to think of Shiva as the destroyer, and now I think of Shiva as the destroyer of delusion. So I've managed to think of her as an ally as well. But I really appreciate your time and instruction, and we will hopefully take it up next week. And I'll just take you backstage and say goodbye to the audience. All right, thanks again. Man, I just learned so much every time I spend time with Yudhishthira. So this is the end of this segment of the show, but stay tuned because we're going to go to another yoga instructor, Divya, to say goodbye. And until then, when we have a chance to meet again, and hopefully we're all peaceful, calm, and serene. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Lovewise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart, so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.